Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just continuing on with the story of the rebuild of this pair of 40mm Bing carbies that came out of Melbourne. Since I made the last video, I have soda blasted them all and then put them about 40-45 minutes in an ultrasound hot water tank with a slightly acidic solution, and they've come out really quite nicely. Everything is spotless and pretty much like new. Gives the alloy a nice, almost wet blasted type finish, and the brass isn't etched or anything like that. It's all really quite nice. I have put the butterfly and the throttle spindle back in and adjusted it, put a new O-ring on it, and now it is no longer have any sideways movement, and it's nice and crisp and clean and closing properly. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. This is the slide. I don't actually put this piston in the ultrasound machine because it has a highly polished metal shaft, and in the early carbies as well it has a metal kind of catch thing that holds the slide needles in place, and I just don't want to risk ever damaging or etching those, so I always clean that bit by hand. Butterfly, now look, if you're going to work on these sorts of things, I had a hell of a job getting the screws out of this. Someone had absolutely just destroyed them, and I have had to drill them out in the past. But you can just go and buy a set of just cheap electrician screwdrivers. You know, they're not expensive at all. They came from Aldi, these ones. They're about 20 bucks, and they've got the correct profile in the blade. Just get a set of about 8 of them. They're all different sizes, and if you do that when you're working on slotted screws on these bikes, you will never ever hurt them. They just go in and come out and go in and come out, and they fit the taper, and nothing goes wrong. So just a word of advice. Now these screws in this one are new, of course, and I've now got this so that it doesn't rattle or scrape anywhere. What you do when you put them back in, that throttle spindle works much like a pinch bolt on the axle that holds your wheels on. The butterfly goes into the slot in the middle, and the hole in the butterfly, or the holes in the butterfly, are much bigger than the shaft size of the screw, and that's so you can adjust it to get the clearances right all the way around it before you nip it up. And once I nipped it up, I just got a little pin punch and put the throttle body down on the hammer handle that I showed you earlier, and used the punch just to deform the threads, and gave the threads a little squeeze with a pair of tiny side cutter pliers just so they can't get out of there. That's a really important thing. Now I'm going to try and do this. I don't know how successful this is going to be, but when you look down the back of this, you've got to set that butterfly up so that it's as close to having no gap when it's closed as it's possible to get. It can't drag on the body. It has to open and close crisply and cleanly, and even when you put the spring on, it still has to do the same. I have had the spring on and took it off again to make this video, so I know that that works. I also put a tiny dab of blue Loctite on the threads of those screws. Now the blue Loctite's just a vibration resistant thing. It's not a Gorilla Loctite where you've got to heat things and break things and hurt things to get it out. It just helps stop the vibration, although if you use the correct screws, they are tapered heads, and they work a little bit like a Morse taper when they go in, and they kind of lock themselves anyway. But you don't want one of those dripping off and running down the inlet manifold. That wouldn't be a funny thing. So that will do for now, and I will show you a little bit more a little later on.